Pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening. Her name's Karen, and she's from Venice.
I'm Karen Garrison. I'm an alcoholic. And it's through the grace of God and the power of Alcoholics Anonymous and sponsorship that I've been sober since May 30th, 1982. And I can tell you that I'm a member of the Pacific Group in West LA, a group that I'm proud to be a member of. And you know, this program is absolutely incredible to me, you guys. I want to thank Rachel for inviting me down here to share my life here with you tonight. This is an honor and a privilege, and it's one that I do not take lightly, I can guarantee you. If you're new in this room tonight, I want to welcome you to the Winner's Circle here. This meeting is indeed one of the best meetings I've ever attended in my life. I love it very much. I get down here as often as I can, and I hope to God that you stay here. I really do. I suggest strongly that you get a sponsor and that you get a book and that you start coming here on a daily basis, and I'll guarantee you that you're going to stay sober, as I've stayed sober for 8 years, and people like me cannot stay sober, I can tell you. My sponsor, Clancy, sends you his love and best wishes from LA tonight, and I talked to him this morning, and I said, what do you want me to talk about tonight? And he said, oh, for Christ's sakes, what do I want you to talk about? He said, get up there and share your experience and your strength and your hope, and you tell those people what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. You ignore the old-timers. They're going to get this program sooner or later without your goddamn inspiration. And you talk to the new people who are the life and blood of AA, and I believe that as I stand up here tonight. I really do believe that. And I welcome you, and I hope to God that you stay here. And then I think I did the most important thing that I can ever do before I ever open my big mouth, and that's to say, God, please help me say what you want me to say to these people. God is very much a part of my life tonight, and it did not used to be that way for me, you guys, I'll guarantee you. I have been taught to have a good time in Alcoholics Anonymous, and we're going to have fun at this meeting tonight, I can tell you. We are going to have a good time. I am very emotional tonight for some reason. I don't know why, I just am. And you know, sometimes I just get crazier, and hell is what I get. And so I'll tell you, we're going to have a good time. You guys, I didn't get sober in California. I got sober in a place called Lincoln, Nebraska, which is just a goddamn terrible place to get sober. And my sponsor always likes me to start with that so you know what you're dealing with right from the jump here. I went through 19 sponsors in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I wasn't doing real well in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the people there loved me enough to get me to Clancy, and I can tell you that my life has changed dramatically ever since that time. And I have absolutely fallen in love with this program, and my sponsor is probably the most important person in my life. I absolutely adore the ground that he walks on, although I can tell you that nobody pisses me off more than he does, you know. You guys, I come from an alcoholic hell that I cannot even describe. It was so bad, and you know, my life is real good today, and sometimes I forget how bad it was, and I can tell you that it was horrible. The day I got sober, I weighed 95 pounds. I was the color of squash. I had an alcoholic hepatitis. I had liver cirrhosis. I had ruptured esophageal varices. And if you don't know what that stuff is, you don't want to know what that stuff is. I was standing on Skid Row drinking Mad Dog in Lincoln, Nebraska. And if you guys haven't drank Mad Dog, you're not missing a damn thing. That stuff will make you crazier than hell. And I was already there, I can tell you. And I stood there that last day of my drinking. You know, I'd lost my nursing license. My kids were long gone. I'd lost my husband twice. I didn't really care about that. But my car, my home, everything was gone. And I stood there thinking to myself, how in the hell did this happen to me? I never once wanted this to happen. I just wanted to have a good time. You guys, I come from basically a lovely, lovely home, and I want you to know that. My mother wants you to know it, too, I can guarantee you. I talked to my mom this morning. I talk to my mom every single week from Los Angeles, and she said, what are you going to do tonight? And I said, Mom, I'm going to go down to Long Beach and give an AA talk. And I love to tell my mom this stuff because she always tells me the same thing as you guys. She said, oh, for Christ's sakes, why do you have to get up there and tell those people all that stuff? They're not going to like you, you know. And I always say, Mom, you know, the rottener you are in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more people love you. And she says, well, I understand that. And I said, you don't have to understand it. And she said, and don't tell those people that you're afraid because they don't like people that are afraid. And I always say, Mom, the more afraid you are in Alcoholics Anonymous, the more people love you. And she says, well, I understand that. I said, you don't have to understand it. And then you guys, she always tells me this, and I love to hear it. She always says, I'm going to tell you something, young lady. You come from good stock, and we don't air our dirty laundry in public, you know. And I always say, Mom, you know, it's not dirty anymore, and she doesn't understand that either. But I can tell you that my mom is a very, very grateful person that I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she does not understand why her daughter's an alcoholic. And I was not raised to be an alcoholic, I'll tell you. Although my mom's very, very grateful that I'm sober today. I have a father that died in 1979 from alcoholism, and one more time tonight, I know how cunning, baffling, and powerful this thing is, and that it does indeed kill people. I love my dad very, very much, and I don't do well with people that stand at AA podiums and blame their mom and dad for anything, because I'll guarantee you that nobody poured it down me but me. And you know, my dad died, and my dad was a major in the Air Force, you guys, and my dad was an incredible person. And you tell me how a major in the Air Force dies, you know, from alcoholism on the streets of Chicago on Skid Row. You know, how does that happen to people? I don't know, than the fact that he was an alcoholic. And I would give anything in the world if my father were alive tonight, because I'll guarantee you that we would have one hell of a lot to talk about. I have a sister who, my mother's only alcoholic. I have a sister who was Miss Rah-Rah in high school, and she was homecoming queen, and she was cheerleader and all that kind of crap. She made straight A's, and she never cracked a book, and I made straight F's and never cracked a book, and that was the difference. And I can tell you that as a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous, I love my sister very, very much today. I just recently found out that not only is she still beautiful at the age of 42 years old, she's also beautiful on the inside, too. And I absolutely adore her. She was a model for Neiman Marcus for many, many years in Dallas, Texas, and she just retired here recently, and now she's teaching school in the West Indies, and she's very, very grateful that I'm sober. I have a brother who's a pilot in the Navy in Spain, and he's not an alcoholic. He's a great guy. I have another sister who's married the public defender in Lincoln, Nebraska, who got me out of one hell of a bunch of trouble when I got sober, and I can tell you that I am welcome in their homes today, and I never used to be. I come from basically, you guys, a very boring family, if you want to know the truth. And I like colorful, exciting people that get themselves into one hell of a lot of trouble. That's what I like. I have a couple kids that are 28 and 29 years old, and I know I don't look old enough to have kids that age, but by God, I sure do. And this is where it really starts getting interesting for me. These kids are a couple of jerks, you guys, and I'm not kidding. I love my kids very, very much, but I can tell you that they are a couple of jerks. My oldest son's an alcoholic, and he's in Nebraska right now just beating the hell out of this thing. He just got picked up for his number 7th drunk driving charge, and one more time he's gotten out of it. And it never ceases to amaze me, the things that we get away with before we get sober. And I know that I am probably the last person in the world that can help him. All I can do is be an example to him. And I have learned that through many, many painful experiences in this program, to keep my mouth shut to that kid. That kid tells me he loves me today, and by God, that is music to my ears, because he never used to tell me that. I have another son who's not an alcoholic, and he's not a drug addict. He's just goofy is what he is. And I got the strangest phone call from this kid about 2 years ago in Los Angeles, and I love to tell this story because it shows you exactly how my life goes. My son called me, and he said, "Mom, I'm getting married tomorrow." And I said, "Getting married tomorrow?" It was a surprise to me that anybody would even have him, if you want to know the truth. And I said, "Jeff, why do you call me the day before the wedding and expect me to be back in Nebraska?" I said, "The Pope's in L.A., and I doubt if I can get a flight out of Los Angeles." And he said, "Mom, I don't expect you to come. It's just going to be a tiny little wedding. Don't worry about coming." Well, now, you guys, you don't tell people like me that stuff. I wanted to be there, and I couldn't get a flight out of Los Angeles. And I talked to Clancy about it, and I was just in a twit. I really was. And Clancy says, "Well, what the hell are you going to do? Walk? If you can't go, you can't go. Just settle down about it." And I did, and I talked to my mom the day after the wedding, and I said, "Mom, how'd the wedding go?" And she said, "Well, it's very lovely, but who was that little girl with them?" And I said, "What little girl?" And she said, "Well, apparently Jeff's got a 4-year-old daughter that you don't know anything about, and I suggest that you call Nebraska and talk to him and find out." And I'll tell you, I was more than happy to do that, you guys. And I picked up that phone, and I called my son, and I said, "Jeff, how'd the wedding go?" And he said, "Mom, it was fine." And I said, "Who was that little girl with you guys?" And he said, "Well, Mom, that's my daughter." And I said, "Why didn't you tell me that I had a grandbaby?" And he said, "Mom, I was afraid you'd get drunk." And I thought, get drunk? I wouldn't have gotten drunk over that. And I can tell you guys, I was on the first thing smoking to get back to Nebraska to meet my little granddaughter. And this little girl walked up to me at the airport, and she said to me, she said, "Are you my grandmother?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "Well, you know, you're my favorite grandma." And see, that's what I want to hear. That's the stuff I strive for. And I said, "Look, why do you say that, Brandy? Her name is Brandy. Doesn't that figure, you know?" I said, "Brandy, why do you say that? And you don't even know me." And she said, "Because you wear ribbons in your hair, and grandmas don't wear ribbons in their hair." And I thought, well, that's about the dumbest reason I've ever heard, but I'll take what I can get. I flew that little girl out here from Nebraska about 1.5 years ago to give me a cake at one of my AA birthdays, and she flew out here by herself, and I thought she'd be afraid on that airplane, and she certainly was not. She got off like she owned it, and I picked her up at the airport, and I knew I was going to be in bad, bad trouble, because this little girl never shuts her mouth for 2 seconds flat, and she chatters like a magpie. And I said, "Brandy, do you ever be quiet?" And she said, "Grandma, I have a lot to say." You know. I said, well, you sure as hell you do. You're giving me a headache. And she said, well, then take some aspirin, you know. But I can tell you that I love that little girl. She is the icing on the cake, you guys, to me. I stood at a nursery window last January in Nebraska, and I looked at my second grandchild, a little baby boy that was born to my son and his wife. And I can tell you the tears of gratitude rolled down my cheeks because I should not have been standing there. And my son told me, he said, Mom, everybody in this place is staring at you. Will you quit making such a big deal out of this? And I said, Jeffrey, quite frankly, I could give a shit less who's staring at me. I'll cry if I want to cry, you know. Anyway, you guys, things with my family are very, very good today, and it's only a direct result of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was growing up, you guys, I was a disruptive jerk is what I was. I was always in trouble in school, always getting kicked out of classrooms, and picking my nose, staring out the window, falling in love with the men teachers, looking at the boys, whatever. I never felt like I belonged anywhere. I hated discipline. I hated school. And I ran around and did things with people that felt the same way I did, which led me to believe the whole thing was just fine with everybody else, you know. And my mom and dad were always at school trying to get me back in. And, you know, when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of drugs on the streets. And I realized that I'm in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous tonight, and I honor that. I identify myself as an alcoholic from this podium, but I'm also a drug addict, too, and I need to make that a small part of my story. My sponsor encourages me to do that. And, you know, there wasn't a lot of drugs when I was growing up, but I'll guarantee you that I found every single one of them. There was some marijuana on the streets and some speed and stuff. And, you know, when I was growing up, you guys, I'm 46 years old. I'm going to be 46 in a couple weeks. And I know I don't look 46, but by God, I am. And you know, when I was growing up, you know, if you got caught for possession of marijuana, you went to prison is what you did. And today you get a ticket, big deal, you know. But I found those drugs and I did them. And I really don't remember my first drink, but I'll guarantee you that I hope to God I never forget my last one. But I remember what alcohol did for me. Alcohol made me feel like I belonged, and I drank at any given opportunity from that time on. I could be anything I wanted to be, and I could do anything I wanted to do. And I was probably about 13 years old. You know, when I was growing up, and I hate to say this from an AA podium, but it's precisely the way it was for me, that if you pat me on the head, my pants fall off, you know. And I got myself into a lot of trouble when I was growing up. And I got pregnant when I was 16 years old, and I had to get married. And I married as it must be an alcoholic. And this guy wasn't even a man, you guys. He was 17 years old, and I was 16. And I couldn't cook, I couldn't clean, I couldn't take care of a baby, nor did I want to take care of a baby. And before we knew it, he had 2 little babies to take care of. And I quick found out what caused all that, and I put a halt to it, I'll guarantee you. And that caused me a lot of trouble throughout the years. And like I said, as it must be, I married an alcoholic, not most alcoholic women. And this guy used to come home and beat the hell out of me on a regular basis. And I grew to hate this man. I literally hated his guts. And I'm not blaming him for my disease, so please don't get me wrong. It's just part of my story, and I need to share it. And he wouldn't work and stuff. He was very, very irresponsible. And I had to get a job. And I went to work as a nurse aide at a hospital there in Nebraska. And for the first time in my life, I began to respect and admire something, and it's called nursing. And I had that respect and admiration today, too, by the way. And I absolutely loved that job. And I made a plan to myself. That job became more important than my family. And I'm not saying that's right. It's just the way it was for me. And then alcohol became more important than that to me. But anyway, I made a plan to myself. I am so sick and tired of this man coming home and beating the hell out of me. I'm so tired of the way my life is going, and I am going to divorce him, and I would love to become a registered nurse. That's what I would love to do. You know, they say that alcoholics don't have willpower, and I'm here to tell you tonight from this podium that that is just crap. I have more willpower than 20 elephants. When I want to do well, I am going to do well. I don't have any problem willpower as far as my disease goes, but when I want to do something, I am going to do it. And I went back to school, and I finished junior high, and I finished high school. And I went to college full-time for 3 years, and I worked full-time for 3 years. And I'm talking about 18, 20 hours a day, you guys, and that is hard stuff to do. And I raised 2 little boys in the midst of all that. And at the age of 27 years old, I became a registered nurse. And if you guys think I'm proud to stand at this podium tonight and tell you that I got jerked in front of the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska, and they told me, you are a disgrace to your profession, you are a disgrace to nursing, and you are a disgrace to medicine, and you are no longer working because we just jerked your nursing license. If you think I'm proud of that, you're just crazier than hell, because I love my profession very, very much. And it just goes to show you, you know, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that this disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It also says that self-knowledge does not mean a damn thing. And I can tell you that I studied alcoholism when I was in nurses training, and I knew all about it, but I could not stop my own. I literally could not stop my own, which shows me one more time that that book knows exactly what the hell it's talking about. Anyway, I divorced this man when I was 27 years old, and you guys, a whole new world opened up to me, and it's called men and alcohol. And let me tell you, I went absolutely crazy. I had a lot of lost time to make up for it, if anybody in here can identify with that. I was engaged 8 times during that divorce from this man, and I never did marry these people. 2 of them died from alcoholism. You guys, I don't know anything about social drinking. I really don't. I never drank with social drinkers, nor do I ever intend to. They bore the hell out of me. I drank with colorful, exciting people. I love the bars. I love the men. I love the sex. I love the music. I love all the crap that goes on in there. I fit in there like a glove, and I particularly like what goes on after those bars close, if you want to know the truth. And you know, during those years, I'm telling you, I got myself in real bad situations. In the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it also says that we're to tell in a general way what our drinking was like. And I'll tell you that you're going to get the general idea real quick about what my drinking was like. I ran around and I drank with medical people mostly, you guys. They were intense, colorful people. They worked hard and they played hard, and I love these people. And I'm talking, these people are alcoholics. I'm talking about the incidence of alcoholism in the medical field is tremendously high. That ought to do a lot for your self-worth if you're thinking about going to the hospital. But anyway, and I love those people, and I love those people today, and they're so grateful that I'm sober that they cannot even see straight. And I'm talking about alcoholics. I ran around with the nurses that I worked with, and we went to the horse races in Omaha, Nebraska one time, and I absolutely love the horse races. I love everything that I shouldn't be doing, and the girls told me, they said, Karen, it's time to go back to Lincoln. We're all drunk, and the horse race has been over with for 3 hours. And I said, well, run along. You know, I had met you guys from Council Bluffs, Iowa, and like I said, you pat me on the head and I'll follow you anywhere. And these guys wanted to take me to a party, and by God, I was going. And my friends went back to Lincoln. And I really can't tell you much about that party nor the people that I was with. All I know is that we have a little town in Nebraska, and it's called Palmyra, Nebraska. And it's a town of about 200 people. And I can tell you that town of 200 people, they take a dim view of naked women walking on their highways. I can tell you that. And I woke up out of a blackout about 4 o'clock in the morning, and here I was, stark naked, my high heels, carrying my purse, walking down the highway. It was February in Nebraska, and it's a tad bit nippy in February in Nebraska. Tonight I know why ducks' feathers freeze. And anyway, I thought to myself, what the hell am I going to do? Well, what do? Do you walk is what you do. And the first person I ran into was a state pig of all the luck. And you know, in Nebraska, the cops travel by themselves. They don't have a partner. They're a little bit smarter out here in California than that. And this guy stopped his squad car, and he turned on his siren, and he looked at me, and he rolled down his window, and he said, what the hell are you doing? And I thought, well, that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say. It's quite obvious what I was doing. And he told me, he said, lady, you get in this squad car, and you sit down, and don't you touch me. And you guys, every time I'm in trouble, I would do one thing more to make it worse every time. And I looked at this cop, and I said, I'm not getting in your squad car. You might try and rape me. And he said, lady, I wouldn't bet any money on it. You are absolutely disgusting is what you are. And I'm here to tell you that made me madder than anything that was going on. And to make a long story short, he had to get a matron out from the Lincoln, Nebraska City Jail to come out there and get me, and she was not pleased, I can tell you. They were very, very busy that night in downtown Lincoln Jail, and they did not have time for this foolishness. And I went downtown, looked for assault and battery against her, against him, for kicking in his windshield, for verbal abuse, for all the crap, all the delightful little antics that we pull as practicing alcoholics. And I went downtown, looked in that cop's raincoat. And you know how cops keep raincoats in the trunks of their car for these occasions, I guess. And I'll never forget how humiliating that was in that courtroom the very next morning when my brother-in-law, the public defender, came up to me, and he didn't know I was in that courtroom, and he said, Karen, have you lost your marbles or what? What is the matter with you? Why would you do something like this? And I looked at my brother-in-law, and I said the same thing to this man that I said to many, many people in many, many courtrooms. I said, oh, for Christ's sakes, Dennis, this could happen to anybody, And we all know better than that. And that cost me about $3,000 to get out of that, you guys, and I just shirked it off like, so what? A big deal. I'll never forget what it's like to wake up in the hospital that I worked at. You guys, after I became a nurse, I went to work in the operating room, and I loved working in surgery. I loved working with those surgeons. I loved taking care of those patients, and I loved the people that I worked with. It became very, very important to me, and that hospital was starting to find out about me. And I woke up one more time. I'd been at the horse races with a couple people, and I'm one of these alcoholic females with a big mouth. I smart off to people, and I get myself into a lot of trouble. I have a big mouth in sobriety, but I can tell you it's coming down a lot. And I'd smarted off to some guy at that horse race track, and he popped the hell out of me. And a plastic surgeon was putting 18 stitches in my mouth. And I'll never forget what this doctor told me. He said, "Karen, we love you so much. You are such a good nurse. Let's send you to a treatment center. Let's get this drinking thing taken care of." And I looked at this surgeon, and I thought, how dare you say that to me? This man had the audacity to even suggest that I might have a drinking problem. And I looked at this guy and I said, "Just fix my lip and get the hell out of my face. I'll drink if I want to drink." And that's exactly what I did. You guys, in the drunk driving charges and the bad checks and all the crap that we do. And my kids were starting to get in a lot of trouble. And you know, I was engaged to all these people, and they were dying. I couldn't even marry anybody. They'd die from alcoholism, for Christ's sakes. And I thought to myself, you know, I need to get married to my ex-husband again. That's what I need to do. And I got some words of advice for people in here. If anybody in this room is thinking about getting married to the same person twice, don't do it. You're going to be sorry. The only way I can describe it is it's like taking a bite out of the same turd twice, if you will. And I'm sure he feels the same way I do. And anyway, you know, I thought to myself, you know, I need to get even with this man for all the things that he did to me. And my kids need their father. And those are not very good reasons to get married, I can tell you. And I danced that guy through 3 of the most miserable years of his life on the face of this earth, I can tell you. And I need to tell you one thing that I did to this man, and I love to tell this story. And my sponsor, Clancy, always says, "Karen, you know, that's not funny at all." And I think it's funny, so I tell it. When I married this man again, I told him, I said, "If you ever come home and hit me again, buddy, I am going to kill you. Make no mistake about that." And he said, "Karen, I'll never hit you again ever." And I said, "You better see that you don't." And he lied is what he did. And he came home drunk one night. And girls, you know what guys do when they come home drunk. They want to take you to bed and stuff. And I was not buying it. For some reason, I'll never know why, I was sober that night. And if there's anything I can't stand, it's some drunk man mulling me when I'm sober. You know. I will tell you that when the shoe's on the other foot, though, it's fine with me. And the man indicated that to me, and I looked at him and I said, "You get your hands off me and you leave me alone. I want nothing to do with him." And he broke my arm. And I'll guarantee you guys that I was pissed. Make no mistake about that. As a matter of fact, I'm still pissed about it, if you want to know the truth. And I told this guy, I said, "You go to sleep on that couch, buddy, and I'm going to kill you, so help me God." And he stayed up for hours, you guys, with his eyes open, you know, like that. And as it must be, you know, like I said, he was drunk and he passed out. And I started drinking martinis. And this is what alcohol does for me, you guys. Alcohol tells me what to do. I don't tell it what to do. And I had about 8, 10 martinis, and I was sitting there watching this man. And the more I was watching him, the madder I was getting. And this guy had passed out. And I hate to say this from a podium, but this is precisely what he was doing. He was laying there playing with himself. And I thought, "You disgusting man, you make me sick to my stomach." And the more I drank, the madder I got. And I thought to myself, what can I do to get even with this man for all the things that he has done to me? And you guys, I'm a nurse and I'm very familiar with male anatomy. And I'd be very familiar with male anatomy if I wasn't a nurse, let me tell you. And my kids have just gotten some super glue, you guys. Rachel, these people are so sick in this room. Anyway, I got that super glue out. My kids were nailing down everything in the house that you could nail down, and I got that super glue out and I read the directions. And like I said, I was drunk and I misread the directions. And what I thought the directions said were, "If this hits human skin, get it off within 15 hours. Now, why the hell would it say that? What it said was, if it hits human skin, get it off within 5 minutes. And this was about 16, 17 years ago, you guys, and this is when super glue first came out, and it was powerful stuff, and you did not want to screw around with super glue. And I thought to myself, that's what I'm going to do. And I went over to this man, and I poured super glue all over this guy's groin, and I mean everywhere. There was not one place on this man that did not have super glue. And you know, one thing about my ex-husband, he always got up and went to work, you guys. He never missed work. And I knew he'd be up in a few hours, and he'd get that glue off, and he wasn't going to get hurt that bad. I didn't know what I wanted to accomplish. I was drunk. I guess I wanted to tug a little or something. I don't know. And that's not what happened. And I laughed about it, and I went to bed. And I woke up in the morning to screams of horror like you cannot even believe. And I'll tell you what happened to my ex-husband. It turned out to be not very funny at all. This man never had the advantage of being circumcised when he was born, and now he was, clearly. And we had a telephone by our bedroom there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And you know, one thing you guys got to keep in mind is that they do not see things like this in Lincoln, Nebraska. They just do not see things like this here. And my ex-husband called the police, and the cops were out in front of our home and with their sirens on, and there was an ambulance out there, and the neighbors were gawking out the windows. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I should not have done this, you know. And the cops were laughing, which led me to believe the whole thing was funny. And I'll never forget what these cops told me. They said, "Lady, are you crazy or what? Why would anybody do anything like this?" And I said, "What the hell makes you think I did it anyway?" You know, I was only standing there with super glue on my hands, for Christ's sakes. And anyway, they told me, they said, "You're under arrest for assault and battery." And I said, "You cannot arrest wives in Nebraska for assault and battery against their husbands, or vice versa. I knew better than that." And 2 days later, when I got out of jail, I found out that I was wrong. Anyway, you guys, they took that guy to the very hospital that I worked at in surgery. And one more time, they saw what Karen Garrison did, you know. And you know, I tell you, I thought to myself at this time, I thought, man, oh man, they had to get two doctors down from Creighton University Medical School in Omaha, Nebraska to get that glue off. And there's a paper written about that at Creighton University Medical School in Omaha. And I'd always wanted a paper written about me, but not like this, I can guarantee you. And I remember thinking to myself, God, when this guy comes home from the hospital, he's going to glue something of mine shut, you know. And I thought, I'm getting the hell out of this marriage, and that's what I did. And I divorced him one more time. And, you know, you guys, just to show you that Alcoholics Anonymous works, I just recently sat down and made amends to that man in Sacramento, California. And I can tell you that it was a real gift of AA, because it really turned out well for me. He kind of backs up when he sees me. But he accepted my amends, and I could not resist asking him. I said, "Have you ever hit anybody again?" And he said, "No, I haven't." And I thought, I bet you haven't either. But I can tell you what our book says is true. I walked away from that, and I was free of this man. I was free of those marriages and what I had done to him, you know. I truly am sorry for doing that. And you guys, I got involved with a man that is the most bizarre man I have ever met before in my entire life. This guy told me he was in the mafia in Nebraska. Now, I don't think anybody in Lincoln, Nebraska is in the mafia, for Christ's sakes. And I was lying to him, and he was lying to me. And you know, he was an alcoholic, and it was your typical alcoholic nightmare. It was just bullshit is what it was. And the day came for me when that hospital that I worked at, they said, "Karen, we are so tired of you oversleeping. We're tired of you calling in sick. You know, gluing husbands, getting picked up for drunk driving when you're naked and all this kind of crap, you know, and you're going to go to a treatment center or you're fired is what's going to happen." And I looked at these people and I said, "You and what army's going to make me?" And I walked out of a job that I loved more than anything in the whole world, you guys, and I really mean that. I cannot say that enough tonight, that I would never do anything to jeopardize the people that I take care of, the patients, the people that I work with, the patients that I take care of. And it just goes to show you what alcohol did to me. And I walked out of that job and I went to work at a nursing home there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And if you work in a nursing home in this room tonight, I am not knocking nursing homes, so please don't get me wrong. I just need to tell you what I felt about something. And I thought to myself, last year I was in the operating room, and this year I'm in this nursing home cleaning up crap, and I absolutely hated my own guts for being there. And I couldn't even keep that job, for Christ's sakes. And I found myself doing things at that nursing home that I am not proud to stand at any AA podium and discuss. It took me years into my sobriety before I would even talk about this, and Clancy encourages me to do that. And if anybody in this room can identify with what I have to say tonight, I'm more than happy to do that. And you guys, I found myself stealing drugs is what I was doing. I was stealing morphine and Demerol and cocaine and Valium and anything I could get my damn hands on. And I am not proud of that, make no mistake about that. And I hated my own guts for doing it. I had many, many prescriptions for Valium. I'll tell you what a typical day for me was like. I was drinking on a daily basis, you guys. I was waking up in the middle of the night in severe withdrawal, and I had to take Valium to get up and get dressed or drink or whatever just to function. It was something I had to do. And my whole life was revolving around alcohol and drugs, and that's all I could do. And it was no more fun to be doing any of it, I can tell you. And the day came for me when the people that owned that nursing home, they came up to me and they said, "Karen, what in the hell's the matter with you? You're just weird is what you are. You're a good nurse, but you're just weird." And I thought, you'd be weird too if you had 200 milligrams of Demerol on board. You'd be weird too. And I walked out of that job. I threw my narcotic keys at them and walked out the door before they fired me. And I went to work at a great big hospital there in Lincoln, Nebraska, Bryan Memorial Hospital. And it's a fine, fine facility. And I told these people I was from Denver, Colorado, and I needed a nursing position. And the word travels real fast in Nebraska when you're a crappy nurse. And I could not believe it, you guys. I was drunk on that interview. I don't mean falling down drunk, but I was just maintaining a certain level in my bloodstream that I would not shake and have tremors anymore. And they hired me. I couldn't believe it. I kept that job for 3 months doing the same thing as I was doing at that nursing home, stealing drugs. And the day came for me when I got caught stealing some morphine red-handed. And I will never forget this as long as I live. It has got to be the most humiliating moment of my entire life. When the people that ran that hospital, they said, you give us your narcotic keys and you get the hell out of here, and don't you ever darken this doorstep again. We're reporting this to the State Board of Nursing. And that's exactly what they did. And I would do the same thing today if I was in that situation. And I told you what happened there. And you guys, to make a long story short for me, I wound up on the streets is what happened to me. And I was on the streets for a couple years, and I have traveled and I've hitchhiked all over the Midwest, and I have seen and I have done things that no woman should ever see or do, I can guarantee you. Sometimes I'm still so sick in the head, I think to myself, I wouldn't mind seeing some of them again, you know. And my sponsor assures me that I'm still a very, very ill person in this program. And you know, I've hitchhiked all over. I've prostituted myself. I've been in nut houses. I've been in detoxes. I've been in hospitals for esophageal bleeding. I've had blood transfusions. You know, I cannot think of a thing that has not happened to me as a practicing female alcoholic. And to make a long story short, I wound up back there in Nebraska one more time, standing on that street corner. And you guys, the day I got sober, I was so goddamn sick I could not even stand up. I was dying from alcoholism. You know, I have a good time at the podium, and I laugh and I joke and I have a good time. But I can tell you that you had better believe that I am right on ass serious about my recovery. And I can tell you I don't ever want to have to go through that again as long as I live. And I really can't tell you much about that day. All I know is that I thought to myself, there was a Hilton Hotel standing around the corner from that Skid Row area, and I remember thinking to myself, I used to stand on top of that Hilton Hotel and drink martinis with surgeons. What the hell am I doing drinking Mad Dog with these people? And I rather imagine they felt the same way when they got there. And you know, I can't tell you much about that day. All I know is that I woke up in an intensive care ward of the very hospital that I was born at, that I worked at for 19 years, and I can tell you guys that the alcoholic hell for me started the day that I got sober. And I can tell you, you know, I'm not a very big person. I only weighed 95 pounds when I got sober. And I was coming off a quart or whatever a day and 200 milligrams of Valium a day, and that's a lot of booze and that's a lot of pills, and I had a lot of dying to do, let me tell you. You know, they say that most alcohol withdrawal is over with in 3 days, and maybe it is for some people, but it certainly was not for me. And it was going to be a long time before I was going to start feeling better and, you know, starting to get some of this recovery. And I had tubes coming out of my belly. They were draining fluid off my liver. I had IVs going, and I screamed at those nurses, and I said, you get me some Librium, you get me some Valium, you get me something. This is absolutely inhumane that anybody should have to go through this. And you guys, I went to a fine, fine facility. They knew exactly how to deal with people like me. And these nurses said, Karen, your heart's not throwing any irregularities, and you need to fill every one of these tremors, and maybe you'll never do it again. And I hated those people. I can't even begin to tell you how much I hated them. But let me tell you what those people did for me, you guys. They got me 10 people from Alcoholics Anonymous to come and sit with me. And I can tell you that these people never left me day or night for one solid month. I had somebody from AA with me at all times. And these people used to say things to me like, Karen, all you got to do is keep breathing. Anybody that's been through withdrawal in this room knows exactly what I'm talking about. It is not a fun thing to go through. And knock on wood, I'll never have to do it again. And, you know, I kept saying to these people, you know, when is this withdrawal going to stop? And they said, when it's time. And I thought, when it's time? Hell, that wasn't good enough for me. I wanted a date is what I wanted. And they were absolutely accurate about that. When it's time, it's time. And at 30 days of sobriety, I went into that official treatment program at that hospital. And you guys, this is what I was like when I was 30 days sober. I turned on you like you cannot even believe when you started telling me what to do. And you know, I went through many, many counselors there. And this whole process took a couple years. I was doing it for the court system by this time. I had $5,000 worth of bad checks to pick up. I was $58,000 in debt. And that judge told me, you're either staying in Alcoholics Anonymous and doing what these people tell you to do, or you're going to prison. And I'll guarantee you I stayed in AA. And I completed an aftercare program. I went to an evening care program and an outpatient program. And this whole process took a couple years. And I went through 19 sponsors there in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'm not proud of that. And the day came for me when this old-timer grabbed me out of the meeting. He said, Karen, we have had all the crap that we're going to take off of you. You know, you are not going to tell the new people they don't have to read the book anymore. You are not even going to talk to the new people anymore. You know, you keep your damn mouth shut. You don't even know what you're talking about. And he grabbed me out of that meeting. He said, there's going to be a man from Los Angeles, California speaking in Kearney, Nebraska this weekend. And you're going to go up and hear this man speak, and you're going to ask him to be your sponsor. And I looked at this guy and I said, who the hell do you think you are that you're going to tell me who's going to sponsor me? He said, Karen, if you don't get in that car and go with us, I'm going to tell everybody in Lincoln, Nebraska how you stole money from a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll guarantee you I was in that car going to Kearney, Nebraska. And for the old timers in this room tonight, I paid that money back too, by the way. And I can tell you guys that from a podium in Kearney, Nebraska, that Clancy literally put the magic of Alcoholics Anonymous into my life. And I can tell you I was on the edge of my seat listening to this man talk, because for the first time in my sobriety, I was identifying with another alcoholic, with all his craziness, all the things that he had done. And by the end of that talk, I wanted this man for a sponsor. And I turned to these people that I was with from Lincoln, and I said, you remember one thing, this was my idea and not yours. And I walked up to Clancy, and I asked Clancy to be my sponsor. And he looked at me and he said, I don't sponsor crazy goddamn people like you. And I thought, why did he say that to me? He doesn't even know me. And I didn't know that these people had called him long distance before he came to Nebraska and told them about me. And he said, bring her up and I'll talk to her. And he saw right through my crap. I was standing there with my little white gloves on acting like an angel. And he looked at me and he said, you know, Karen, I really don't like to sponsor people on long-distance basis, but I'm going to do this for you because if I don't do it, you're probably going to go die somewhere. He said, you're going to call me every day till I tell you not to call me every day. You are going to read that book. You are going to sponsor people. You are not going to argue with these old-timers anymore. You're going to become a viable, active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the first time you argue with me, you can find yourself a different sponsor. And I can tell you guys, the hair on my neck literally stood up. And I said two words that I damn near fell over when I said them. I said, yes, sir. And I'll tell you that I say that today, too. Respect's got to start for me somewhere, and it might as well start with my sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I went back to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I got very, very busy in AA there, and I was doing everything the way you teach people to do it in California. And you guys, my life was changing on a dramatic basis. I wound up by sponsoring 56 people in that town. And I'm not bragging about that. It's not that much fun to sponsor 56 people, I can tell you. And I was busy, let me tell you. And those women taught me the first 4 years of my sobriety what to do and what not to do in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love those people. They're all still sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous today. Not because of me, because they're active in AA. And you know, one of the first directions that Clancy gave me, he said, Karen, I want you to get that nursing license back. And I don't care what the hell you have to do, you get your ass up to the State Board of Nursing and tell those people you want your license back. And I tried to tell Clancy, Clancy, I cannot go through that kind of humiliation. He said, get up there and quit arguing with me. And I did it. And you guys, I can tell you that one of the happiest days of my life occurred about 5 years ago, when one more time I was jerked in front of the State Board of Nursing in Nebraska, and this time what they told me literally brought me to my knees for the first time in Alcoholics Anonymous. This had to be my first spiritual orgasm. No shit, you know. What they said to me, they said, Karen, welcome home. You're fully reinstated as a registered nurse. And I can tell you guys that that is a gift from Alcoholics Anonymous. I do not deserve that. You know, please. And I can tell you guys that I was falling in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. And another thing Clancy told me, he said, Karen, I want you to start getting on your knees in the morning. I want you to get on your knees at night. And I want you to pray for God's will and not yours. And I said, Clancy, I do not believe that stuff, and I'm not going to do it. He said, you will do it, and you're not going to argue with me about it. You don't have to believe it. Just do it anyway. And I did it. I did everything Clancy asked me to do, and I did it for a period of 2 years, and I felt no connection with God. And I used to call Clancy and say, Clancy, I don't feel anything here. And he said, Karen, are you staying sober one day at a time in Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, you know that I am. And he said, that's the point of the whole thing, you dumbbell. You know, I was not playing with a full deck when I arrived here. And you guys, I found myself in a great big stadium in Montreal in 1985. And I love to tell this story. Yeah, I have 2 stories to tell you, and I love to tell this. They're so precious to me. And I found myself in a great big stadium at the World Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I intend to see this all over again in Seattle in a couple weeks. And I hope all of you get to go. It's a magnificent experience. And, you know, I find that the longer I stay sober, the cornier I get for some reason. And anyway, they were practicing for a flag ceremony, and Clancy was down in that football field, and they were, you know, practicing for it. And I ran down to tell my sponsor hi, and he introduced me to people from all over the world in Alcoholics Anonymous. And you guys, I'm from Nebraska, and I was impressed. And I went back up and joined my friends, and we sat down, and that flag ceremony started. And I will never forget this. As long as I live, I will never forget this. When the United States of America's flag touched the turf of that stadium, I saw 52,000 people go absolutely crazy. And I looked around myself, and I did not see one dry eye in that stadium. And I remember chills literally ran up and down my spine. And these people loved Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember for the first time in my sobriety, with any amount of sincerity, I said, God, thank you for getting me here. Please help me to stay here. Please help me to love Alcoholics Anonymous as much as these people do. God, I wanted what you guys had, and I was willing to go to any length to get it. And I can tell you that just for a minute, the world stopped, you guys. The world stopped. And I remembered a woman that was standing on Skid Row in Lincoln, Nebraska, gagging down gin, vodka, puking up blood, and all that kind of stuff. And I remembered what these people had done for me. And I can tell you that for the first time with any sincerity, you know, I knew that there was a God. I knew there had to be a God because the people of Alcoholics Anonymous were not capable of getting a person like me sober. And I can tell you guys that I cried and I cried and I cried. And I can tell you that the day I got sober, if you would have put a knife at my neck, I would not have cried. And I can tell you that chills literally run up and down my spine. And I can tell you that in a foreign country, in a foreign land, I came to believe, just like the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, in a power greater than myself. And I have talked to that God every day sincerely since. My sponsor has taught me that God and AA have got to be center core here. Not some damn man, not some damn job. It's God and AA. And I've tried real hard to do that. You guys, I have one more story to tell you, then I'm going to sit down, and I love to tell this story more than anything in the whole world. It's so precious to me. I work at UCLA in the operating room on two of their transplant teams, their heart and liver transplant teams, and I find myself being jetted all over the Western Hemisphere harvesting organs for UCLA, and there's a terrible nursing crisis right now all over the world, and my boss called me one night. I had the night off, and she said, Karen, I need you to come over here. We got people, that are sick, and I need your help. And I was so tired, you guys. I'd worked 72 hours that week, and I was exhausted. And I said, I'm not coming to work. I'm exhausted. And she hung up on me. And my sponsor has taught me to do what's in front of me and not debate it. And I was going to call Clancy, but I don't want to talk to Clancy about any damn thing at 4 o'clock in the morning. I just went to work. And I'm so glad that I did. And we got over there, and I sent my orderly upstairs after our patient. We were going to do a liver transplant, a little girl that was 3 years old, you guys. And she was so sick and stuff. And he brought her down to surgery. And he said, Karen, you're not going to believe all the people that are out there. My God, there's got to be 50 people with this family. And I went out front to get my little girl. And the first thing I noticed was the mother. She had the most beautiful blue eyes I have ever seen in my life. And the dad was good looking and stuff. And I looked down at and all those people that were with him. And I looked down at my little patient. You guys, Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me to love at a level that I never dreamt possible for myself. And I can tell you that I looked into the same beautiful blue eyes that mother had. And I fell in love with this baby girl. And she was so sick she couldn't even raise her head off the pillow. And she had a little bear in her arms. And she was holding on to this bear for dear life. And I said, oh, you brought your little bear to surgery. And she told me that her bear was going to have a liver transplant. And she came down with him because he was scared and stuff. And I said, oh, you're both going to have one. And she said, no, just the bear. And the mom and dad were absolutely in hysterics, you guys. And they sent him out to the waiting room. And we took the little girl back to surgery. And she said, why is my mommy crying? Tell my mommy not to cry. And I said, because your mommy loves you so much. And we put that little girl to sleep. And I can tell you guys that case did not go well. We almost lost that baby a couple times due to blood loss and things. But she survived that 16-hour liver transplant. And I became obsessed with this child. I had to see her again. And we have a rule at UCLA that you may not get involved with these transplant patients because they want to know where the organs come from, and we cannot tell them. And I don't need to tell anybody in this room that I'm real good at breaking rules. And I thought, I'm just going to go up and see how this little girl's doing. I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm just going to go up and open her door and see how she's doing. And that's what I did when she was 6 days post-op. And I went up to her room and I opened her door. And you guys, I could not believe what was in front of my face. My God, the power of God, the power of God. Here was this little baby girl, 6 days post-op from a 16-hour liver transplant, jumping up and down in her crib. It was the first time she'd been up since her surgery. Her diapers were hanging around her knees. She had that bear in one arm and a baby bottle in the other. Her mom had French braided her hair. She had ribbons hanging out of her hair. And the little girl had put Band-Aids all over this bear. He had Band-Aids on his eyes, his ears, and I mean everywhere. And, something caught my eye. That whole room full of people were in there, and the mom and dad were crying with tears of joy rolling down their faces because that little girl was up for the first time. And something caught my eye out of the corner of my eye. And I'll be damned if our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, wasn't sitting on that kid's dresser. And it all became self-explanatory to me. Now, if you think I'm going to stay out of that room, you're crazier than hell. I was in that room like a flash. And I said to the mother, I didn't care if I got fired. I said to the mother, I said, whose book is that? And she said, that's my book. And I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and so is my husband. And these are our friends. And you guys, his sponsor was there, and her sponsor was there. The lady was 5 years sober that day. These people had driven 500 miles to be with this family. They were not from the LA area. And they have showed me one more time what the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is all about. It is called love and service, And I tell you, it was an absolutely magnificent day in my life. And I went over to the little girl, and she gave me her little bear. And she told me, my little bear is so sick, you take him home and you take care of him. And I can tell you guys that bear is my most prized possession in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought, what can I give this mother? And I remembered something that was in my pocket that Clancy gave me when I was 5 years sober. It was a medallion for 5 years of sobriety. And I'm a selfish person. I'm a selfish woman. And it was going to take a long time for me to find somebody special enough, in my opinion, to get that 5-year medallion to him. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, they say that we got to give it away to keep it, you guys. And I knew I had found the person to give my 5-year medallion to. And I went over to this woman and I said, please take this. I want you to have it. And she said, oh, God, I can't do that. And I said, please. And you guys, I really meant that. I really wanted her to have that. You know, it turned out to be a wonderful day. We got a cake for the mother. The nurses got wind of all this, and we celebrated their 5 years of sobriety. What a magnificent thing it was. And you guys, you know, without you, I would have missed all that. I would have missed it all. You know, people tell me all the time, they say, Karen, why do you keep doing all this stuff, going to all these meetings, all the things that you do? And I know of no greater thing to say to them, that this to the end, that my great blessing may never spoil me, that I may forever live in thankful contemplation of Him who presides over us all. And there's more reasons than that for me, you guys. You're the ones that walked with me when nobody else would walk with me. You held my hand when nobody else would hold my hand. And you told me that you loved me. And I don't do any of these things very well, but I can tell you the one thing that I do with 200% absolute perfection, and that is this, that I love you more than anything in the whole world. And I can tell you that it is one hell of a long ways from Skid Row, Nebraska, to this podium tonight in Long Beach, California, and I thank you for my life. Thank you for having me.